Kenya is working to build a thriving economy that produces jobs, livelihoods, and wealth for the Kenyan people. And a lot of that requires a strong investment in infrastructure. So President Uhuru Kenyatta knew that if he did not make that strong investment in infrastructure, our economy was going to be unable to grow towards where it should grow. And therefore, I think the issue of China's debts to Kenya, or any other country's debts to Kenya, it all comes down to Kenya trying to close its infrastructure gap for our own good. How other countries regard these issues is really not up to us. What we know is that we're trying to build our own economy.
Well, I think it's part of a long tradition of xenophobic narratives from the West. They've never liked China in Africa. They've always been against the Chinese presence in Africa. So as African analysts who watch the Sino-African space, we've noted there's been an evolution in the narrative, and the latest one is a debt trap narrative, which is just false. If you look at the scale of debt that, for example, Kenya has, we are indebted to other countries far more. If you look at factors such as the Eurobond, where we've borrowed billions of dollars, I think it's really it's more motivated by making China look bad in Africa than the actual welfare or concern for the financial welfare of African people.
The SGR is a very important project or landmark that defines relations between Kenya and China. And we know the benefits, as I said, may not be seen at this point in time. Although many of us have read a lot of negative publicity about the SGR, that if we take more loans about SGR, we are not going to sustain our debt, and so many things about the negative parts of the SGR. But I don't know which country has developed without even taking loans from outside. Today, Japan is the most indebted country in the world at 253%. Ours is 57.
I think what is more central is for China and Africa to work much more on measuring the successes of lifting the massive number of people from poverty on the African continent. I think China is doing it quite well. It has uplifted more than 700 million people from poverty, and equally so with massive investments on African continent. The bigger question for Chinese leaders, scholars and African leaders and scholars, is to find ways of measuring the number of people who are being uplifted from poverty. If they can do that, it will be the greatest way of silencing the noise coming from others who are somehow suffering from sour grape, nothing else.
Opportunities have never been better for Africa. China is putting $60 billion for Africa. We have never in our history had so much resources dedicated to African development. The question is, we ask as Africans, have we put the mechanisms, the frameworks, the policies to ensure that all this money benefit or these resources benefit the ordinary African and uplift our economies collectively?